today's topic, what are we going to be talking about? We're going to be talking about this. Loops. So you might be asking yourself, what is a loop? Okay. And the best way to describe a loop is that it is a memory that you possess in your mind or within your time of existence. Now, this memory it came from an action or a decision that you made at some point in time in your life. And the reason why we would say to ourselves like, oh yeah, I make decisions all the time. But the loops are significant. They're significant because what happens with a loop is something like this. The decision you make, right? Let's say you were on this track, can sidetrack you or track you this way. Okay, so, and it's not to say that you can't, and then you would start up on a different type of timeline. You should have been on this linear timeline, but you decided to take a different decision. So these decisions that create loops are very, very pivotal to our existence. They're very, very pivotal to how our life takes shape. And it's not to say that at some point you can't change the loop and come back. You definitely can. You can decide to go back to that previous existence or the actual timeline that is best suited for you. But these loops or cycles, I like to use loops because you can, they'll come full circle. That's a great thing about a loop, is that the decision you made that made you go off a different trajectory. What a loop is a decision or a story that you believe is false. Okay. And the thing is that, let's say, for example, your inner soul, your inner workings, know in your heart of hearts that what you are believing in is false. Right? What will happen is that your trajectory will begin to loop back around to the actual timeline, and you'll be given another chance to decide the same decision again. Okay. And see if you change your perspective, if you relive the memory properly, or if you actually stay and don't end up looping back and continue on the timeline, right? From your previous, not deciding to go back to the original. And I'm not talking about like anything is right or wrong, but what I'm saying is that your heart, if it knows that what you decided, that major decision was incorrect, you're going to notice that you're given another or afforded another attempt at the same decision again. This could be a year later, 2 years later, 10 years later. Somewhere along the line, even if it's not life affording you this opportunity, it may be yourself that comes to this conclusion at some point, is that you need to resolve the lie that you told yourself. Okay. And it's a lie of your own observation of how a situation played out. Okay. And it's an askewed vision of the story. Usually why it's askew is because there's certain things that come into play that askew it. And usually it's emotion, because emotions can drive us in different directions. Because if we look at something in a literal sense or in a factual sense, you may make a different decision. If you avoid all the emotions, right, in a decision, in a pivotal decision such as this, you might decide a different way. But because emotion gets involved, right, that might be what eschews you, because you're full of passion, rage, excitement, anger, greed, envy, any of the negative. Usually it's negative ones, because it's forcing you to lie to yourself about the positive trajectory of where in which you're supposed to go down. And and the thing is that the time frame is not important, because if, let's say, like I said, if your subconscious truly knows that the decision you made, that pivotal decision, was an incorrect perception, you may get this opportunity again down the road. Now, why I'm bringing this up, because as I have had to come to terms with a lot of these loops, I am the byproduct of breaking many, many loops. And one of the loops, as you may or may not know, is me when I was young at 22 deciding against God's plan. And what happened is that God, in all of her infinite wisdom, gave me a loop situation so that once I came back to that precipice moment, and if you guys don't know, I cut off my abilities at 22. And then I went through a whole, other road, right? Based on that pivotal decision. And what happened 13 years later is that as I was stripped of everything, right, I was on the ground praying to God, the God that I had thought never would speak with me again, or the God that I felt I had abandoned. There were so many things that I had gone through that 13 years that I have gone through. But in that moment in time, I was right back at the same exact precipice moment to bring me back onto the timeline that I was meant to be on. And funny enough, because God is infinite and wise, God knew this and kind of gave me a heads up in the question I was posed, and kind of gave me foreshadowing of knowing that I would have a second chance. And the thing is that from the perception I had 13 years prior, I had no realization of this. But come that point 13 years later, when I sat in that exact moment to decide the exact same question once again, I saw the beauty of how the loop had worked, and I had seen that all things that had formulated in those 13 years brought me back to that exact moment in time, to that exact question, and I had an answer prepared at the time that the loop was finished. But I'm not going to go into that. I'm going to use a story that has just happened to my family, and this is a perfect example of a loop. So this is, again, something that we tell ourselves, right, based on emotion or where we're at that moment in time, that is a pivotal decision that we make that puts us on a different trajectory. So I'm going to explain my uncle's situation because, again, please hear me out all the way, because this will help you too. If you're somebody who's in these loops and you're missing the mark somehow and you don't know what it is that you did, or you don't know what took place, I hope that the story makes sense to you, because if you listen to the story, you can take the nuggets and jewels of wisdom that come out of it. It is a perfect example of this. So back in 2012, okay, that's a long time ago, my grandmother passes away. My grandmother had 8 siblings, meaning I have 8 aunts and uncles. And one of my uncles at the time of my grandmother's death, right, he had been living with her, and he was under the impression that because he had lived with her, that he should have been endowed the entire estate. And obviously, this is his emotions fueled by grief, loss, anger. No one should make a decision when somebody's dying, really and truly, because you're going to make such idiotic decisions and you're going to make such idiotic ways of being because of what you're going through emotionally. However, my uncle at this time had told the whole family, all the other siblings, no, the house should go to me because I was living with her at the end. Now, provided my other uncle, right, he was the executor of the will. So it was up to my other uncle to decide what takes place with the estate. The original uncle had no say because he was not the executor. My uncle decided, the one who was the executor, decided that the property and the estate should be split up between the 8 siblings fairly and squarely. Now, because my uncle, the one who felt he should get the whole estate, this is an emotional response to what he feels at the time, says to our family when this was all being distributed that because he didn't get the house, because he didn't get the whole estate, my family were abandoners. And this is important, why I'm writing this out, okay? That we left him high and dry. And that we stopping his growth, okay? From prospering in this life. We were stopping him. Okay. So, what takes place after my grandmother's death and everything's distributed? Everyone gets their 80,000, and they go their own ways. Now, the thing is, my uncle at that moment in time wrote a huge email to all of the brothers and sisters saying, I'm going to be disconnecting, abandoning the family, okay? I'm going to be leaving you all high and dry, and I'm going to be stopping my communication, and I'm going to be stopping my presence and my commune with all of you. So he basically excommunicado himself from the family. So ironically, the same things he was accusing the family of doing is what he did in return. It's a reflection of the actions of this lie. The lie was, these are the lies, okay? These are the lies he fed himself based on the emotions he felt at the time. I hope everyone's getting an understanding. So for these last years, we're now in 2025. So we're looking at over 13 years, right? That he's been excommunicado. Okay. And like I said with loops, if what you believe is a lie, truly, in the grand scheme of everything is a lie, it doesn't matter if you believe it. You will live in the lie for as long as it's true to you. Okay, so he goes off for 13 years. He lives his life. Many of us have gone to his other city that he lives in, tried to communicate with him, tried to reach out to him, and he has shunned every single one of us time and time and time again in these last 13 years. Now, at this present moment in time, after all this elongation, he writes an email to my cousin stating that he needs $10,000. His business is not doing well. He needs our help. Now, here's the thing. If the lie he told himself was true, we would not be the ones that could help him because we abandoned him. Supposedly we didn't have his best interest at heart. Now, the thing is that at this moment in time, His life, like I said, all of us get that second chance to come back to the other side of our actual timeline of what was meant for us truly. It's not to say that life doesn't unravel a different path for you if you decide so. It totally does. That's why sometimes I call life kind of like a video game. Even if you derail on a video game, you know, a world will, you know, create itself as you walk this other path. So it's not to say that life doesn't afford you different perceptions and different experiences, totally, but it will always bring you back, because if these major decisions, right, the ones that take you or rear you off that path, will always come full circle once again. And in his case, it was 13 years, 13 long years later. So he's in need of help. Who does he reach out to? He reaches out to my cousin. He tells my cousin, I am in this way. I really need help to keep my life going. My cousin, he specifically asked that the brothers and sisters, if they could all pitch in. Okay. Now, here's the thing. All of the brothers and sisters were more than happy to try to help him because they miss him. They want him back in our community. They want him back in the family. They want him to be a part of it. And it's not to say that the money was, you know, quid pro quo, like you come back in the family if you get this money. That's not what it was. What it was is that they love him and they miss him. So obviously they were more than happy to give him the money. Now, here's the thing. With loops, right? What takes place, like I said, it's a big lie. It's a big lie that we feed ourselves. Now, in this case, he must understand that this is somewhat of an oxymoron. You cannot believe the lie. You cannot believe that we're abandoners, we're horrible people, all these things, if who you need help from at the time is your family. So he's in a crux situation right now because the lie is under siege. The lie is under siege that he has told himself for all this time. The reason why he's estranged, the reason why he's excommunicado is because of this lie. He has to believe the lie in order for his life to continue this way. So the thing is that it's actually an oxymoron because we actually are the ones that can help. We actually are the ones that can love him. But the thing is, he needs to stick to the lie. So the minute that we all retorted back on this email saying, yes, we're willing to help him, he had a choice. He had a choice to either rejoin or, like I said, go this direction, go back on the same path he was on. When you're afforded a loop, okay, you have that reconvening moment in time, and this is his, but here's what happened. The minute that we said yes, my cousin said, oh, I'll drive to Montreal and I'll give you it in cash up front. What does he say? I can't meet you. I'm writing this all up. I can't meet you. Send it by check. He basically ended up realizing, because you have to understand, there was a couple days when my cousin was like, okay, I'm going to come to Montreal. I'm going to drop off this money. You're going to meet my kids for the first time ever, because, you know, all she wanted to do was see her uncle. That's all she wanted. She's going to drive 6 hours, you know, to go see him and waste her time and be there for him. And he says, I can't. So, right, what's taking place? He is now adopting back into the lie. Because if you were in a situation where you really needed money, if your life depends on this money, you shouldn't say I can't. You should say I can and I will, because you need this, right? So he's basically jeopardizing his existence for this lie. And that's how deep loops can be. Because the thing is that if he faces this lie and says, oh, maybe they aren't abandoners, maybe they aren't these people, maybe they are good, then he has to face the fact that maybe he made a mistake. He was wrong. And that's the main thing, like I said at the beginning. It's an askew perception of a memory or a time and place that took place for us. And the thing is that the emotions at the time that he was facing was ones of grief and sorrow and anger and malice and all of these things. And for him, 13 years later, to review this same memory, he has to really put it in his own mind that, oh my gosh, maybe I saw this incorrectly. But here's the thing. You end up at the same crux point again. God, the universe puts you in that same crux point, because if you dismantle the lie, what happens? You reconnect with the family. You say you're sorry. You make amends. There's a change of heart. There's a change of perception. There's a change of existence. And then you go back onto that same timeline you were originally on. You do this loop and you end up back on the same timeline in a different time setting, in a different place, but the actual lie gets dismantled and pushed away, and then you reconnect. But in his case, he said, I can't. So therefore, he's sticking to the lie. Him making it a big deal of how the money was provided to him is sticking with the lie. Him not wanting to reconnect at all is sticking with the lie. So because of his actions, now here's the tricky thing, okay? Think about it, all right? by him pushing, doing this push, right? Saying, oh no, I need it this way, I need it that way. It is basically a slap in the face, because here's my cousin and all of us pitching in money, trying to make this connection. And he's saying, I can't connect. I can't do this. I can't. Our egos are now wounded because we're like, okay, well, we were here to help you. And now you're saying that it has to be your way or the highway, without amends, without saying you're sorry, without, saying anything to that degree. So what is he causing? He's again causing that abandonment. Now, why I keep bringing up abandonment is because sometimes when the lie is so strong, right? This lie was so strong for him. He's actually reflecting the actions that will cause us to be, again, these abandoners. He needs the lie to be true. So instead of him saying, oh, great, Danielle's going to come down. Oh, great, I'm going to get to see the kids. Oh, great, I'm going to get it in cash and fulfill my problem and get everything solved for myself. He's now pushing, so that we end up changing our minds. And that's exactly what took place. My uncle, my other uncle, and my mother and my other aunt were like, why are we going to, forsake all this money and try to give it to him and help him when he's obviously not willing to concede to the fact that we didn't do anything wrong in the first place? All the other side of the family wants is some type of understanding. He's saying, oh, I can't. It's all about him. It's all about his wants, his wills, his, in a sense, emotional greediness. He's not willing to concede that he did anything wrong, yet he needs our help. Because again, we did not abandon. Again, we did not do any of these things. But the underlying thing is that he's not willing to help himself. By him saying I can't is him not willing to help himself. So therefore, it causes all the others to feel like they're taking an egoic hit. And so a lot of the person said, okay, fine. You don't want to give us 50% or even an inch to work with. We're going to retract our inch. And what happens? We, again, fulfill the prophecy of abandoners so that he can maintain the lie once again and be estranged and continue on and say, see, I told myself that they were abandoners. I told myself that they were good for nothings, right? But the thing is that how this takes place is that realistically, he still needs the help. Realistically, he doesn't have those persons in his life to do this. So he has to face the lie in order to get out of the loop. He has to face the lie that maybe what he saw 12, 13 years ago about us was maybe askew and incorrect and fueled by emotion. In order to come to the equation that if I need help and the only people I can come to is my family, then maybe my lie is a lie. Maybe I am wrong. And I'm just using this example because it's a perfect example. He's going to now continue on his trajectory and not introduce himself back into the family, not make amends with himself and the situation. And he's going to continue on. And life is going to afford him maybe more opportunities in the future to come back again. Or he's going to go into another loop or cycle once again until he learns that this is a lie. And this is exactly what happened with me with God. And this is exactly what's happened with me with many, many different situations in my life. And I can tell you something, if you understand what I mean by this, that if there is something in your life that you lied to yourself, and maybe you did it at the time because you needed to protect yourself or you needed to feel a certain way. There are many of these in our life that we face, and they are pivotal points of existence. They are pivotal markers that change our trajectory. So why it is important to take heed to these things, why it was important for me to realize that I messed up with God, that I lied to myself about God, God didn't come down on me, I came down on myself, was so that I could reemerge into my proper timeline, and then I could take on my mission and go back on the timeline I was supposed to be on. But I had to figure that out for myself, and when the moment in time came, I didn't stick to the I can't. I realized I had lied to myself. And because I realized that the version of myself, because I was fueled by a lot of emotions too, mainly fear. But what I'm trying to say is that we have to dissect these things in our own life. And this could be for major relationships. In this case with my uncle, it had to do with estranging himself from a family. But I hope you guys understand that there are compartmentalized reactions. He ended up being the abandoner that he projected out to us. He could have taken different steps and been involved and got everything he needed. But because he stuck with the lie, he is now going back in another loop. So I hope you understand more about loops. This is the best way I could describe them. They are pivotal decisions you make in your life, you lied about a memory within your mind, you didn't see things from all angles, and then if you're brought to that same precipice moment again where you have to make the same decision, please, if this is you right now, if this message is for you, think differently. Don't fuel what your decision is based on the same old emotions, because those old emotions, because you haven't dealt with the loop, will still be there. That pain, that suffering, that fear, whatever it may be. For my uncle, I'm pretty sure he rehashed that whole thing from 13 years prior. He was probably like, oh, they're still good for the pain I went through, oh, this. And that's what fueled him to be the I can't and I won't. So please know that those emotions will bring, when you're at that precipice moment, that loop point, again, you're going to feel those exact emotions and you're going to bring them forward. And then you're going to have to reassess who you are today and how the decision shapes your life and your world. And that's how you break out of loops. Love you lots. Hope this helped. And if you do like what I'm saying, please like, please share, please subscribe. You know where that button is. It does help the channel. And if you are looking for a higher self channeling, come find me in Up High Healing, where I can actually connect you with your higher self and you can perform a therapy session with you. Have a great day, guys. Love you lots.